Welcome to Brookhaven, Arkansas. Population 19,203 IQ. Pending. It's a small town with big dreams, mostly about lawn care, Jesus, and catching someone suspicious doing literally nothing. Here, diversity means your Taco Bell also serves mild salsa and anxiety, and justice. Well, Justice shows up late, out of breath, and carrying a Slurpee. But let's talk about our main character, Officer Brent Harlan. If you took a gym teacher, a strip mall security guard, and the ego of a rejected reality show contestant, and microwaved it for 3 minutes on full power, you'd get Brent. Officer Harlan doesn't do police work. He does PowerPoint-level assumptions. He's the kind of guy who thinks SWAT means suspicious with a tan. His brain? Mostly filled with Hot Pockets, TikTok rage clips, and one sentence he repeats every 12 minutes. "Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to calm down." Today, Officer Brent was doing what he does best, standing near snacks and scanning for melanin. Enter a woman in a hoodie, calm, quiet. Black, clearly a threat to the Dorito section. Brent's cop senses tingled. Well, something tingled, might have been gas. He stepped in front of her like he was auditioning for Fast Furious 17, Racism Drift. "You lost, ma'am?" Spoiler, he was about to be. Because of the woman he tried to profile? She wasn't just not a criminal, she was his boss. Like, boss, SWAT Commander, leads tactical teams. Trains cops, signs his evaluations. If respect were bullets, she had a whole magazine, and Brent just brought a water gun. What followed was legendary, humiliating, poetic. The kind of moment where even the security camera tilted slightly to get a better view, but that's later. Right now, just know this. Officer Brent Harlan, defender of potato chips and fragile whiteness, tried to arrest a war hero over a granola bar. And by the end of today, she'd be walking out with a salute, and he'd be walking out with a cardboard box and a performance review written in tears. So yeah. Welcome to Brookhaven, where logic takes a coffee break. And karma's always parked right outside. Let the story begin. Major Imani Blake was not in the mood to fight for her life over a granola bar. She had just finished a 14-hour shift, 3 hostage negotiations, and 1 argument with a vending machine that still owed her 75 cents. All she wanted, it was a protein bar. Something with almonds, maybe peanut butter. The fuel of champions. The snack of peace. So she pulled into Quicktown Market, the local gas station that somehow smelled like beef jerky and wet cardboard, even when it was clean. She wore a hoodie, jeans, and the exhausted aura of someone who had stared into the soul of bureaucracy and come out emotionally wrinkled. The store was practically empty. 1 cashier. 1 guy in aisle 2 was pretending that trail mix required deep intellectual analysis. And 1 police officer, leaning against a soda cooler like he was posing for a budget cologne ad called Authority. Officer Brent Harlan. A man whose mustache had more confidence than his moral compass. A man whose brain had 2 settings, suspicious and extra suspicious, especially if you were black, in a hoodie and shopping instead of stealing oxygen. Imani walked past him, didn't look twice, grabbed a bottle of water and made a beeline for the protein bars like a woman on a mission. She just wanted calories, not conflict. But of course, that's when she heard it. "Hey, hold up." Imani stopped. Not out of fear, but because she knew this scene. She had lived this scene. She had trained other officers to avoid this scene, and yet, here it was. Live in 4K. No soundtrack, no logic. She turned slowly, like a Jedi sensing stupidity from behind. "You lost, ma'am?" Harlan asked, stepping forward with the confidence of a man who had once won an argument with his dog. Imani raised an eyebrow. Here we go, she thought. The local hero has arrived, defender of snack aisles, slayer of almond bars. Just grabbing something, she said calmly. Harlan folded his arms. The universal body language for, I'm about to ruin your afternoon with zero evidence. You sure about that? Imani looked around. The cashier had suddenly turned into a statue. The guy in aisle 2 was now deeply invested in reading the back of a bag of Sun Chips upside down. Nobody wanted to get involved. Because this was Brookhaven, where calling out racism is riskier than microwaving fish in the office break room. Is there a problem, officer? She asked. He smirked. Oh, the smirk. The same one men use before saying calm down or can't you take a joke. I've seen this before. They walk in, pretend to shop, wait for the moment, and bam, register's empty. Bam. Like she was gonna somersault over the counter and escape into the parking lot with a bag of almonds in her mouth like a squirrel on meth. Imani stared at him, unblinking. Not because she was scared, but if she blinked, she might roll her eyes so hard they'd eject like missiles. That's what you think I'm doing? You tell me. She was silent. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she was mentally filling out his transfer paperwork for the Department of Traffic Cones and Lost Dogs. Then came the moment. The radio. Click dispatch. I've got a possible suspect at Quicktown. At this point, even the trail mix guy started filming. The cashier looked like he'd just seen a ghost with a lawyer. And Harlan, still smug, still confident. Still blissfully unaware that the woman he was about to accuse of snack-related terrorism trained the entire Brookhaven SWAT team, including his supervisor and his supervisor's supervisor. Imani's inner voice. Should I tell him, or let him crash like a drunk chicken on rollerblades? She chose silence. She glanced down at the protein bar in her hand. Almond Crunch, symbolic. Because she came in for energy, but now she'd need it to survive this stupidity. She wasn't just being accused, she was being shrunk. Reduced to a threat, a stereotype, a suspicious body in a hoodie. And yet, she remained calm. Because the truth was stretching its neck, cracking its knuckles, and waiting in the wings. And when it showed up, it would be louder than any radio call, sharper than any assumption, and dumber than any excuse Harlan could invent on the spot. She said nothing. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's dignified, camera ready, and waiting for karma to arrive with a badge and backup. You sure you're not casing the place, ma'am? Officer Brent Harlan delivered the line like it was Shakespeare, but with the IQ of a soggy ham sandwich. Imani blinked. Not because she was stunned, but because she was mentally scrolling through every HR seminar she'd ever taught about what not to say to a citizen when you're projecting your racial anxiety onto aisle 4. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a full-blown hallucination in uniform, the kind that starts with a ma'am and ends with a lawsuit. You want to check my ID, she said, cool as granite, or deliver a monologue? Harlan didn't laugh. He didn't smile. Because sarcasm is like kale. Some people just aren't built to digest it. He narrowed his eyes like a cat who had just seen a cucumber. Dispatch. I've got a suspicious suspect at Quicktown Market, requesting backup. Ah, yes. The sacred words, suspicious suspect, which in Brookhaven translates to, someone black exists near beef jerky without my approval. At this point, the air in the store changed. The cashier looked up, like he just remembered he had a spine. The guy in aisle 2? Phone out. Recording. Probably captioning it. Brookhaven cop thinks protein bar equals federal crime. Harlan puffed up. His badge caught the light. His ego caught fire. And then, the door opened. Cue the cinematic whoosh. Enter Lieutenant Carla Wu. Sharp haircut. No-nonsense boots. an expression like she just caught her kid drawing on the wall with a steak knife. She took one look at Harlan, one look at Imani, and dropped a line so clean it deserved its own soundtrack. "You just tried to detain the tactical commander who trains your entire district." Silence. The kind of silence that makes air conditioners louder. The kind that grabs everyone by the ears and yells, "You done messed up." Harlan froze, mouth slightly open, as if trying to remember all the poor life choices that led him here. The cashier exhaled loudly, possibly for the first time in 5 minutes. The guy with the phone. He whispered, "Yo, this is about to go viral." Imani didn't move, didn't gloat, didn't say "told you so," because when you're a black woman in a hoodie, there's no victory lap. Just the exhausting satisfaction of surviving a moment you never should have had to survive. Harlan blinked. Twice. Then looked at Carla like she'd just told him water was wet and racism was still a thing. "Wait, what?" Carla stepped forward. "That's Major Imani Blake. She runs active threat training for 3 counties. Last month, she led a live-fire hostage simulation in 40 seconds flat. Meanwhile, you're out here panicking over peanut butter." Harlan's mouth moved. Nothing came out. His badge suddenly weighed 40 pounds. His belt. Now, a metaphor for his collapsing authority. He looked like a man trying to download common sense on dial-up. Imani finally turned to face him fully. "All you had to do was ask, but you wanted to feel big, so you reached for control. Now you're holding the receipt." Carla crossed her arms. "How about you step outside before you dig the hole any deeper?" Harlan hesitated, like a toddler refusing to eat broccoli he just threw on the floor. But then, he turned. Stiff, slow, like a parade float losing helium. And just like that, he was gone. The door shut behind him with a satisfying ding. Imani turned back toward the fridge. She still hadn't picked her protein bar. The cashier whispered, "I should have said something." Imani shrugged. "You didn't make the rules." But silence keeps him running. Behind her, Carla exhaled. "We'll report it. It won't be buried." Imani finally reached for the almond crunch. Held it in her hand like it was a trophy or a metaphor or both. She walked to the counter. The cashier rang her up with the awkward speed of a man trying to redeem his entire ancestry. "That'll be $3.29. Imani handed over a 5 bud. No words, no drama, no apology expected. Because here's the truth. Racism doesn't need guns or slurs. Sometimes it's just a badge, an assumption, and the confidence to be completely, unapologetically wrong in public. In Brookhaven, the badge isn't always the problem. It's the man behind it who thinks he's the main character, and forgets that the camera's rolling. Same Quicktown store. Same tired fluorescent lights. Same Officer Harlan, though now he didn't look like a superhero anymore. He looked like an Uber driver who had just found out he was chauffeuring the director of the FBI. The air was thick. Tense, like a belt after Thanksgiving dinner. Imani said nothing, didn't breathe loudly. Didn't smirk. She simply reached into her pocket. Harlan flinched, like she was about to pull out a Glock blessed by a priest. His hand twitched toward his gun. "Relax," Imani said, her voice softer than the low-carb chips in her hand. "I'm not pulling a weapon. I'm pulling your career." And then, click, she drew out a glinting badge. Not the kind that guards school crossings, the kind that makes dispatchers stutter and SWAT teams stand at attention. "If I wanted to," she said slowly, "you'd be face down in 2 seconds. But I didn't." The words dropped like a stone into a still lake. No ripple, just weight. And clarity. And then, the door opened. Not an angel. Not a lawyer. Deputy Chief Malcolm Ross. Black suit. Steel gaze. a walk like he just skipped the election and still won. Ross looked at Harlan, then at Imani. In exactly 1.5 seconds, he understood the entire play. He nodded. No questions needed. She's taken care of him yet? Only with her eyes, Carla Wu replied dryly, which is merciful. Ross walked up to Harlan, who now looked like a third grader caught eating toothpaste behind the bookshelf. You know who she is? Harlan stammered. Ross didn't need the answer. Let me help you out. She's the commander of the entire county's SWAT unit. She leads hostage rescues, tactical raids, and trains officers you're not even qualified to apply next to. Nobody said a word. Even the Doritos went silent. Ross looked back at Harlan. His next words weren't loud. We weren't fast. But they cut like an American hospital bill. The only thing that saved you today was her restraint, not your judgment. Boom. One line, like a full indictment. A mic drop, a closing statement, and the beginning of a 6-page disciplinary report. Harlan turned red. His eyes were blinking as if trying to hit Ctrl+Z with his eyelids. His hand slipped away from his belt. That swagger evaporated like an expired Starbucks coupon. Imani didn't say a word. Just looked. The look of someone who survived being doubted 30 times, underestimated 50 times, and had to stay calm 100 times just to avoid knocking someone's jaw off. The look of a black woman who doesn't need to scream to be right. Ross stepped back, nodded toward the door. Leave. Now, before I ask you to leave the radio behind too. Harlan walked out, stiff. Like a frozen hot dog on legs. The door clicked shut behind him, but to Imani, it sounded like a temporary ending. Carla Wu turned to her. You all right? Imani didn't smile, didn't nod. She just picked up her water bottle and answered, better than him, and because of him. The problem wasn't that he didn't recognize her. The problem was, he didn't think someone like her could exist in that uniform. You could hear the silence stretch, not awkward silence. Verdict, silence. The kind that shows up right before consequences kick the door in. Officer Brent Harlan stood like a deer in LED headlights, frozen, clueless, and about 3 seconds from unemployment. Across from him, Deputy Chief Malcolm Ross wasn't yelling. He didn't have to. His voice was calm. Low, sharp enough to slice through Kevlar. Turn in your badge. 6 words. No emotion, no wiggle room. You could have mistaken it for a Starbucks order, if the caramel drizzle came with career-ending regret. Harlan blinked. His hands hovered near his belt, not in defiance, in that panicked hesitation of someone realizing their power was a rental. And the lease just got yanked. Sir, I was just doing... Ross cut him off without raising his voice. You were just assuming. You were just profiling. You were just reckless. And now you're just done. It landed. Harlan's face went full traffic light red. His hands moved slowly, like even his fingers were embarrassed to be part of this moment. He unclipped his badge. Set it down, then the gun, gently like placing a baby on a pillow made of guilt. Click, clack, 2 sounds. The sound of a power trip ending in real time. Lieutenant Carla Wu stepped forward, arms crossed, tone ice cold. Next time, ask. Don't assume. And definitely don't broadcast your bias like it's sponsored by Fox News. The cashier behind the counter still hadn't moved. Neither had the trail mix guy, who was now filming horizontally. This was getting serious. Ross took a slow step forward. You saw a black woman in casual clothes, and you reached for your radio before your brain. What didn't you know? She could have ended your career with a memo. But instead, she gave you the gift of restraint. Oof. The air left the room like someone had popped a tire full of male ego. Harlan stood there. No defense, no swagger, just empty. Because for once, I feared for my safety wasn't on the table. What was on the table? His badge, his weapon, and the weight of 100,000 quiet mistakes that people like him never get called out for. He finally spoke. Am I suspended? Ross didn't blink. Desk duty, pending full review. And don't think for a second this disappears. There are cameras. There are witnesses. Hell, it'll probably be on TikTok before dinner. Harlan clenched his jaw. The only thing holding it together now was pure, unfiltered shame. He nodded once, turned, and walked out. No music. Just the clack of regulation boots on tile. Each step, a resignation letter with sound effects. Imani watched him go. Not smug, not spiteful, just still, tired. Because this wasn't a triumph, it was survival. Again. Ross looked at her, not as a superior. Not even as an officer, but as a human. You okay? Imani took a breath. A deep, slow breath. The kind you take before choosing not to scream in a room that has already forgotten how to listen. This happens every day, she said, her voice calm. I just happen to have a badge. And a camera. Most people don't. It landed like truth always does. Quiet, precise, undeniable. The cashier finally whispered, I should have stepped in. Imani didn't flinch. You didn't have to create the problem, but silence always helps it grow. Even Wu was quiet, her tough-as-nails attitude softening for just a moment. We're filing this, properly, no sweep under the rug garbage, Imani nodded. Not as gratitude, just acknowledgement that someone said it out loud. That someone else, for once, would carry the burden of fixing it. Ross turned to leave. We'll call if there's more fallout. Imani shook her head, half laughing under her breath. Fallout? For me, this was Tuesday. She turned back to the fridge, picked up the same damn bottle of water. Walked to the counter, paid, left. Because what else do you do when you've just disarmed a ticking time bomb wearing Oakleys? You hydrate, and you move on. He lost a badge. She lost another piece of faith in a system that still thinks calm is the same as safe. The fluorescent lights in the precinct buzzed like overworked opinions. Everything smelled like old printer paper, anxiety, and maybe a hint of reheated burrito. Which, for a SWAT headquarters, was honestly a vibe. Major Imani Blake walked in wearing the same hoodie, the same jeans, and the same calm expression. But something about her presence had changed. Not louder, not heavier, just sharper. She wasn't there to debrief a mission, she was the mission, and the entire SWAT team was already waiting. No talking, no jokes, just lined up near the briefing room door like they were expecting a 4-star general, or the ghost of Christmas accountability. Then, they saluted, in unison, no yelling. No clapping, just the clean, precise snap of boots and palms raised to brows. It wasn't performative. It wasn't viral bait, it was respect, and it landed like a brick through glass. Imani stopped mid-stride, caught off guard. Because she's led tactical raids, kicked indoors, and held pressure on gunshot wounds. But this silence? This was new. No one said anything. For a moment. Then Martinez, the guy who once tried to mix pre-workout with cold brew and almost started a small fire, broke the tension. Next time, ma'am, send him to train with us. Not the other way around. Laughter rippled across the room. Short, tight, earned. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. Imani smiled, barely. The kind of smile you allow after surviving a slow-motion car crash, made entirely of paperwork, microaggressions, and Fox News logic. Ross stood at the back, arms crossed, nodding slightly, not in approval. in acknowledgement, because this moment wasn't about discipline, it was about recognition. Imani stepped into the room. Her team parted like water. She didn't need to ask for space. They gave it, automatically, because they didn't salute the badge. They saluted her. And there's a difference. Someone, maybe Diaz, maybe Henderson, maybe the room itself, said quietly, "We knew your name before the badge." She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because of that line, that one wasn't a compliment. It was a correction, a reminder that real respect isn't sewn into your uniform. It's built in the moments people don't see. When you stay calm while being wrongly accused. When you lead with discipline instead of rage. When you walk into a store for a protein bar and walk out with your dignity intact, despite every effort to strip it away. Imani took her seat at the front. Not at the head, just the front. Because leadership doesn't need a throne. It needs witnesses. They started the briefing. Strategy, diagrams, tactical objectives. But underneath it all, something had shifted. The air, the way they looked at her, the way they saw themselves in her. Because it wasn't just about racism, it was about rank, power, control, and who gets the benefit of the doubt in a hoodie. Imani didn't bring it up again. She didn't need to. Her silence was a full report. Her calm was the testimony, and her badge, still clipped. Still gleaming. Not because she needed it to prove anything, but because it survived the day unshaken. The team dispersed after the meeting. Small talk, fist bumps, a couple of quiet, "You good?" looks. She walked out alone. Night air, cold, clean. Brookhaven was quiet, for now. She pulled her hoodie up, not to hide, but to remind herself she shouldn't have to change her outfit to feel safe. Tonight, they saluted her with silence. Tomorrow, someone else will question her with suspicion, but now they know this is who we salute, and this is who they underestimated. The engine hummed like a nervous whisper. The windshield glowed with the blur of streetlights and sodium yellow halos. Major Imani Blake sat in her car, parked just outside the station. Hands on the steering wheel, eyes on nothing. She wasn't tired. She was paused, like the universe had hit buffering on her faith in humanity. Behind her, a salute. Ahead of her, more work. The day had unraveled like a bad cop drama that somehow won a local Emmy. And all she had wanted, it was a protein bar and some pieces. Instead, she got a microaggression in full HD. A white officer with a fragile ego and a radio trigger finger. And a masterclass in how not to profile your boss in public. She'd kept her cool, because that's what she always does. Because when you're a black woman in America, especially one with rank, your calm is currency. You spend it daily. Sometimes, just to survive a snack run. Her phone buzzed. Lit up. New mission. Because the world doesn't stop for awkward apologies or training updates. It just scrolls on. She didn't answer right away, just stared through the glass like it owed her something. Across the street, the town looked the same. Brookhaven, a place where nothing changes, until someone makes damn sure it can't stay the same. Inside the car, silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that lingers, the kind that smells like, we've always done it this way. And that's the thing about justice in America. It doesn't always crash through your doors with a SWAT team and theme music. Sometimes it shows up quietly, wearing a hoodie, holding a badge, and refusing to disappear. Imani exhaled, voice over. Not out loud, but loud inside. I didn't get justice today. I got something colder, a reminder. That silence makes everything worse, and that most people, especially those like me, don't get cameras or ranks. or salutes. They just get followed, get doubted, get explained away. A red light blinked across the dashboard. She didn't flinch. Just let it blink. Because blinking first, that's for rookies, and she's not one. She finally reached for the phone, accepted the mission, because that's what duty looks like when the system's cracked. You show up anyway. She shifted into drive. The tires rolled slowly over pavement that had seen too many footsteps from people walking in guilt before they ever opened their mouths. And as the car pulled out, she thought, not bitterly, but truthfully, they saw a hoodie. Not a commander, not a medal, not a career. Just a hoodie. And the only thing that changed that narrative? It was a badge, and a room full of people who finally said, not this time. The city lights dimmed behind her. Routine returned. Traffic lights. Storefronts. Nightfall. Brookhaven slept like it had nothing to answer for. But Imani. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. Anger is a match. She'd been burning long enough to know. Change is the fire that keeps burning after the match is gone. In Brookhaven, justice doesn't come with sirens. It comes with silence and a salute. They say justice is blind, but in Brookhaven she's just tired and dressed in a hoodie. Imani didn't get applause. She didn't want it. She got a reminder that surviving shouldn't feel like winning. If this story made you pause, even for a second, then share it. Because silence protects systems, but stories? They break them open. Subscribe to stay loud, comment to stay seen, and ask yourself how many people never walk out with a salute because they never got the chance to walk in. This is Injustice Unmasked.